Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's hop in. Today is Wednesday, August 24th. Uh, I guess for the accountability section, I didn't accomplish anything. More and more, I'm just becoming insanely obsessed with over-optimizing my network and my Wi-Fi, and so I spent most of yesterday just doing that. Yeah, I don't know if I actually accomplished a single other thing. And honestly, I don't know if I really accomplished too much even there. But I'm gonna probably try to commit to leaving it be and stop messing with it. Like there's definitely a insanity is the only word I can use in which there's just something that there's a dissatisfaction as far as the results, and I don't know if I can really improve it. Mostly it's coming from just like completely probably unconnected issues, in that my Netflix streaming TV sometimes cuts out in the audio, and I bet that has really nothing to do with latency or anything like that. So I've just like overly optimized for latency to potentially eliminate that as a problem, just to really find out that no, that really wasn't the problem. And I don't know if there is much of anything I can actually fix to make Netflix stop doing that half-second hitching. Sometimes it goes for very long and doesn't do it on certain settings. Sometimes it happens very quickly, but I've been unable to really figure out what the deal is. In part, it may very well be that whenever an app on my phone is downloading a lot, it's just taking up a bunch of bandwidth, and really I probably just need to try to squish everything down and slice the pie into thinner slices as far as the total bandwidth. But yeah, I really didn't accomplish anything else. I still have a little work to do on that Excel sheet I wanted to work on. I didn't get back to playing Reigns Her Majesty, which is the YouTube thing. I did slightly make some progress moving around my Lego display tables, but not anywhere as much as I should. I really need to work on that too. Like I have a couple of furniture moving projects that are just always going to be at the bottom of the list, because I just don't want to really move furniture or do something that physical. But yeah, in a lot of ways, yesterday was kind of a complete waste of time and failure. And on top of that, with my insomnia, I just am not really awake at the right times in which I'm actually thinking to myself, oh, now would be a good time to make some recordings. Instead, I'm awake right in the middle of the night, where it's you're just all alone and it's dark, and that just leads, I think, to more obsessive over optimization with the Wi-Fi than it does accomplishing anything else. And I have definitely a lot of other things I'd like to accomplish. So we have an upcoming Forbidden and Limited List update there, sorry. So apparently on August 31st, what they're going to do is compile trends and results of decks used in ranked duels and events, and will limit cards and decks to with outstandingly high usage and win rates in line with their impact in the metagame. So they're going to nerf some cards and decks, specifically for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters, which is weird, because doesn't that then immediately announce a split between this game and the current meta of actually playing either the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or the Western version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Card games? But maybe they're kind of lying here, and maybe they really are just going to forbid the exact same things they would have forbidden in the card games. It is also a possibility that they are getting more feedback and data from the game, so forbidden lists, forbidden and limited lists are going to be sourced from this game and then applied retroactively to the card games themselves. The King of All Calamities, Imperial Order, Vanity's Emptiness, Destiny Hero Celestial, and number 75, Bamboozle and Gossip Shadow. That's 5 cards just going to be shipped. Forbidden. Also, you will no longer be able to get cards newly added to the Forbidden list from packs at the shop after the list is implemented. If a card's Forbidden status is lifted in the future, the Forbidden Limited list, it will become available in the card shop packs. Newly forbidden cards on the list still can be generated after the list is implemented. So, in a lot of ways, this is them admitting that there's nothing in this game right now that you can do with forbidden cards. Like, they might as well just be ripped out of the game because you can't play your friends with forbidden cards. There's no unlimited ranked where you could play with forbidden cards. That's something that should be implemented very possibly before even they start to update forbidden lists. But I don't think there's really a path here to try and get these cards specifically either. Like, when is this happening? August 31st? So like in 7 days? So I should probably just get the legacy packs open now. Cards that will be limited, but you'll still be able to get them from packs, will be Crossout Designator, Pot of Prosperity, Prank Kids, Meow Mule, and Fusion Destiny. That limited means you can only have 1 in your deck. Semi-limited means you can have 2. Altergist, Multi-Faker, Salmon, Great, Gazelle, Skill Drain, Fire Formation, Tinkai. Some of these also, like Skill Drain, I think are fairly old cards. So it's kind of weird. And then Knight Assailant is being limited. Replays of duels played before Forbidden Limited list become effective. May show the duel live for a certain period of time after the Forbidden Limited effect becomes effective. So you may see a replay of an old duel. If a card is designated limited, semi-limited, or forbidden, a 20-point card crafting point bonus will be available when dismantling these cards during the period below, which arguably does mean you should open as many packs as possible right now. This would be your best bet. Open as many packs as possible right now, and then get that extra crafting points. And then if you ever want to come back and craft craft it again, you would do that later. So yeah, that's a pretty big change. And then here we have a rankings announcement, which claim your rewards, which for me, I suppose that means I will get close to nothing. And then let's see, I've got some daily stuff, got some logins, and I did the duel live. No, I didn't do the duel live. Good. Okay. So theoretically, your best bet would be to probably just open master packs if you could afford it until you could get to a secret pack, and then thinking about secret packs. But at the very best idea is, the question is, how fast without actually looking at the cards, can I open these packs? Because I need to just drain this. Like, we need to just drain this now. And if you misclick on the skip, that's gonna slow it down. Why are we draining this now? Because if these cards are, if by some random chance amongst these legacy packs I get the cards that are about to be limited and then I have extras, I can very easily dismantle that for extra crafting points after the change happens, which is extra value. And then I could also potentially go into the forbidden limited lists and dismantle cards for crafting points, and that would give us a slight bump in having crafting points. But I don't know to what real avail. Like, I still would need to find the interest and the energy and the time to actively look up what is the top tier meta deck now, if it's not the deck I'm already playing, or figure out how I could improve the deck I'm already playing, because mine was kind of a cheap, watered down version of that top tier meta deck. And then see if I could craft the cards necessary to build that. On the other hand, well, I did enjoy somewhat making a Exodia deck and trying that. I have not played that Exodia deck that I built for the solo runs many months ago at all. It didn't work, and it's only so fun. So last pack of 10, and so we'll go ahead and open these and get the animation while we're at it. So I don't know if I was going to try to make something fun. I don't know what you do with that. Like, you make an Exodia deck, you make a God Cards deck that would just rival the first Yu-Gi-Oh anime series of Yugi's God Cards, or you make a Dark Magician deck that rivals Yugi's cards, and then you make a God card for Yami Yugi's deck, because there was a slight difference, I think, at times. You maybe make some kind of like coin flipping, dice rolling deck just out of random silliness. You maybe make a Harpy Ladies deck. A lot of the decks that I would think might be fun to make are really just based off that first series, that first Yu-Gi-Oh anime series, and they're not really decks that can compete and that are still around. Even the Destiny Hero cards are past my point of interest, so I really wouldn't want to make that. And inherently you run into the problem where you are limited in the number of decks you can have, even though I've expanded that number a little bit to the point where it doesn't make sense to make so many joke or just for fun decks. It feels like instead of having festivals, which they've had far too many of, they need to have some kind of like loner type experience where it's like it is a loner festival. You have to play with loner decks. You can't play with your own cards, and then everybody's just playing with the same 3 loner decks at most, or 5 loner decks. Or you do a straight up cube type idea, like in Magic the Gathering, where you start by opening a whole bunch of cards and then shuffling them all up, and each player works there. Each player takes turns to draw a card. Yep. In fact, that Magic the Gathering cube concept really is the only thing that makes Magic the Gathering still playable after all these years. I probably could delete this deck fairly easily now. Let's see. Let's just straight up delete it. It doesn't matter. And you're all going to end up doing a lot of that. So, by default, if you buy all the pre-built decks, you're going to have 16 of 25 decks made. And you're just never really going to want to change that. That was my Exodia deck, and I just deleted it without even giving it a second thought. So yeah, 15 of 25. So you have 10 decks, one of which is my main deck here, and that's it. But also, suppose I could get rid of some of these structured decks and copy them. So I guess you don't actually have to keep them in play, and instead you could just delete them and have 25 spots. But that seems fairly limited even at that. For a game that's about making card games. Alright, let's see. The other thing I wanted to check is if we dismantle all extra cards, nothing. Because none of the legacy cards can be dismantled. So doing that maybe saves me some time in the future, but it didn't actually help me here. Let's see, we want to do this. And then we want to filter by number owned, I guess. Works. So you have this tiny little sliver of a bar. And wow, we are a lot further than I thought we would be. It's like, are we filtering anything? We're showing everything. We are past the halfway point of having at least one copy of cards. There's still a lot of cards to get, but legacy packs I guess helped a lot more than I thought it would. Now, at a certain point, a lot of these cards I only have one of, but a lot of these cards are just not playable anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter. Like, can't dismantle. Can't dismantle. They need to change that, though, it's particular. Because, like, I don't care if it's distributed or in a structured deck or not. If I have three like shiny versions or foil versions of something, I'd like to be able to get rid of the regular versions and use those crafting points for something better. Well, we are at the halfway point as far as owning one of each card, and I don't really care at all about owning full versions or rarer versions, which is just making this whole list longer. Most of these cards that I do have, I only have one copy of, which, at the risk of going in circles talking, is probably fine. Like, most of these cards I will never play. There is an imbalance certainly in how you get these cards and how you look at these cards. I really would prefer if there was a better way in which cards get thrown in your face and you really look at them and you really start to think about whether a card is actually playable or not, instead of just going to some website somewhere and playing the cards that other people are playing, or listening to other deck builders. It should be a much more engaging experience than that. Yeah, a vast majority of these cards are only one copy. Let's see. You hit 2 copies at this point. So I'd say a quarter of the cards that I own, I either have 2 or more copies. And then it definitely is getting somewhere close to the 8th or 16th. Probably a 16th of all the cards I own have 3 copies. Yeah. So there's definitely a mess there. And then you also have problems where I have like 7 copies of this. There's too many, way more than there should be of cards that I'm having 3-4 copies of, with not a single one of them being dismantleable. But it definitely feels like there should be some sort of reward or something around that idea too. If you're just always sitting on having extra cards, they should find some way to reward that, have perhaps a late game prestige type concept where you are where you're trying to raise a secondary duelist level of some sort. Yeah, since I didn't make it to stage 2, I guess there's just no claim rewards button here. I would have to just assume that there was. So we'll just have to play. That's 22 minutes to say very little. So there was an online games awards or something that happened, so we have a decent amount of video game news that came out. It is definitely, for me, going to be an experiment in just having Video Games Chronicles and Gamatsu and GameDeveloper.com recontextualize and water down what was an event that I could have been paying attention to and watching. And yeah, that was and I didn't watch that. If anything, I did listen to the Giant Bombcast, which it's been several weeks since I've listened to that, so I thought I was out, but I got bored and decided to listen to it, and basically to hear that there's no improvements really. It is suspiciously silent around reviews of the Saints Row game, other than it seems like pretty much every mainstream video game journalist ran into similar, if not the exact same bugs, and instead of coming out and just putting out a review saying this game is buggy and it's just bad, and they seem to have mostly just decided to go silent and not say anything. I think in definitely part because they're SJWs and don't want to feel like they are siding with all the anti-SJWs who said all the characters looked ridiculously woken and tokenistic, which they have, the reviews I have seen have come down to say, yeah, the characters being bad, they'll admit the characters being bad, but they say that's like at the bottom of the list of so many other problems, which is also believable, because the things they were showing off never really looked like any actual gameplay that was that interesting, as far as the Saints Row reboot. And it definitely speaks to a potential problem with Embracer, where this is Embracer just doing what previously like Embracer, THQ would have previously done something like this. Alright, let's go ahead and destroy those. So yeah, they really just shoveled out a game in this week when there really isn't another game to compete, so they're just hoping that'll get them enough sales and move on, or at least it seems like that. They actively have according to the reporters, they've actively not gotten back to the reporters as far as the bugs that they've run into, and they've left the reporters kind of hanging instead. It can't special summon right now. The only thing that they have done that I've heard is that they've offered like PC codes for Saints Row to the reviewers, which would just mean that the reviewers would have to start all over again. So I can't help but assume that several people will just not bother putting out a review, or several reviews will just be really late, which that really reflects a problem in the video game industry, in that somebody can pretty much just not respond to the reviewers, and the mainstream video game journalists won't push back on that hard enough to just say, all right, well, we've got a deadline, we're going to put this out as it is, and as it is, it's going to be very critical of your game. They really, video game designers and publishing companies really have the reviewers wrapped around their pinky fingers. Whereas I personally, if I was running my own show, and I am running my own show, but if I was buying brand new games and I bought Saints Row and it was buggy, I would just say, and I would have the footage ready, I would go, F this game, I would just rage quit, and I would just say, that's it for this series. And that would be it. And that is much closer and in line with what an average video game player would do, is that they would just rage quit the game and move on with their life. Whereas reviewers feel the need to go in further directions and play all the way to the end, or at least pretend like they play all the way to the end. They very well may not be getting anywhere close. Because if they were actively getting anywhere close to the place they needed to be, then why not pull out the review? Yeah, They may be only a couple hours in before they hit that bugs. Let's see. It's not video game related, but Plex has a breach that exposed username, emails, and encrypted passwords. Change your password now. Now, I don't know if you actually need a Plex account to use Plex. I don't think I've ever set up Plex or done that. But yeah, change your password if you did use Plex. I've been leaning more towards trying to use Kodi. And having kind of more of a local to the device setup as far as any ideas of having video and audio. I feel like in a lot of ways the Plex streaming concept is something I don't fully understand, but speaking from the perspective of something I don't fully understand, I kind of think it is more around the idea of a more old-fashioned streaming setup. Which I don't know if you really need that. Maybe you still need that if you've just got a ton of videos already pre-built and set up, but and you're working on cell phones that only have smaller internal storages and don't have micro SD card slots. But even at that, that's kind of silly. You could put a week's worth of footage easily on a 128 gigabyte phone if you just wanted to fill it up. Plex also certainly makes a lot more sense when you're thinking from the perspective of something before Netflix. Now that there are streaming services and you're likely to still have some desire to see the new content on streaming services, the idea of making your own Netflix with Plex is kind of silly. Of course, things do come and go, and certainly if you're going to sail the high seas of piracy, Plex still very possibly is the right choice. The couple times I've tried to use Plex, though, I've definitely had some problems trying to figure it out. Again, not really video game news, but OBS Studio 28 Beta 1 is now available for testing. And they also retweeted that Twitch is aware that there's an issue currently preventing people from starting a stream. We're investigating an issue preventing users from going live. Thanks for the report. So, Twitch is having trouble, but I will say Twitch has not had trouble. Has not had as much trouble as it could have had in the past. It I think has gotten a little bit better at that aspect. Let's go ahead and call from the grave. I'm starting to speculate whether the Godot engine might be the Unity replacement that eventually, because I do think Unity is potentially there. That being said, Godot version 4.0 will discontinue visual scripting. Godot 3.0 came out 5 years ago. In a lot of ways, I don't know if you really need visual scripting in a proper game development engine. There's, I guess a lot of it really comes down to what do they mean by visual scripting. because I know in the Unity and Unreal Engine there is a little bit of you have a box and you can connect box kind of like puzzle pieces together, and that can allow animators and people who aren't actual hardcore programmers to integrate and work in the same software as the hardcore programmers who are actively just going to always be typing everything in text and not doing anything visual, or doing very little visual. So I don't know if that means that aspect is going away, or if it just means there was something that was really simplistic, much like Scratch. Let's see if we can counter the counter there. There definitely were some like Visual Basic ideas that Microsoft came out with too that I don't think really ever worked. If you look at this graph, I guess this is probably the best way to explain it, is that 80% of what the Godot engine is used for seems to be for Godot scripts, with the next 13.8% being C#, and then Visual Script is here as yellow, which is just a tiny little sliver of 0.5%. And then C++ as a module or fork, or C++ as a GD Godot extension or Godot native, and then Rust as a Godot extension or Godot native, or NIM. I don't even know what NIM is. All tiny little slivers. So in a lot of ways it would make an argument to get rid of everything, but I imagine it's fairly easy to copy and paste code from C++ and Rust and maybe even NIM. And something being called C# when really it's C++ is something that I think is pretty easy to do, because like there really isn't that much of a difference if you're not using specific features in C# between C++ and C#. Is that gonna let me resummon this? Struggling mightily just to get to where I want to be, just to get something on the field. Alright, well, this gives me no choice but to do this. Just gonna let him draw a card. Then do this. I feel like I can safely activate this one, and then bring that one to the field. Do this one. Then go ahead and activate this. Bring that up. One more summon. But notice we are giving him a ton of cards because of max C. which that does highlight that Maxi still is somewhat playable if you can identify times in which the player is going to end up special summoning a lot. Then that's gonna do nothing. Oh well. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle. The PlayStation VR 2 will release in early 2023. Capcom wanted Resident Evil 7 to be a live service game with microtransactions, which that's not 100% surprising. There obviously was a high level of pushback from the developers and the Western team in particular to make Resident Evil 7 a game that actually succeeded well, whereas Capcom at that time in particular, and even now, was trying heavily to follow trends and turn the Resident Evil series into a Call of Duty clone, for lack of a better term, live service with microtransactions game. And that is obviously why Resident Evil 6 is as bad as it is that they've wanted that to be a action game, live service game. I kind of feel like this was even known. The executive producer Biting the Bullet, Jun Takeuchi, says the development team fought back, which is good, and it's even somewhat good to say that Capcom can be fought back and they wouldn't just ignore them completely. Now, you definitely get into some of the weirder aspects of what Capcom wanted, I think, when you see and look at the DLC for Resident Evil 7. But the main part of the game was fairly untouched at the end. And the massive success of Resident Evil 7 paved the way to remakes that also didn't end up having any kind of live services or microtransactions in it. And even to this point, even though they're trying to have multiplayer side games of the Resident Evil series, none of those have actually come out and actually succeeded. So over and over again, and unfortunately for video game companies are just going to have to learn this concept over and over again. Capcom has been sent the message that the Resident Evil series is kind of sacred and you can't just turn it into a live service game. It just won't work. It never would have worked. Like, it's a dumb idea for a horror action based video game to try and make that a live service game, to try to make that a online game. I could see maybe skinning some kind of idle mobile game with Capcom Resident Evil characters, and maybe you could get some microtransactions out of that, but I don't think very many people want to play that. Anyways, maybe you could make a Diablo clone for a phone that had microtransactions in it, and maybe that would kind of work, but no. I am uncertain, and I'd kind of like to know, particularly if Japanese people even are big into microtransactions, or if it isn't just a case of Capcom looking over the lake, over the ocean, and looking to China and saying, look at all those microtransactions that we could potentially get from a Chinese audience. It is very possible that there are a lot of microtransaction latent in Japanese games that have made money. And it's not just the Resident Evil series. Capcom has been trying to cash in on the popularity of its older series quite a bit. And definitely trying to turn the series into a milk cow, I guess is the phrase I'm trying to use here. Just trying to milk it for all it's worth and not really treat it properly. But can you be that critical of Capcom when you look at the likes of EA, who totally went down that way and just turned the FIFA series and its sports series into loot box money-making machines? I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we do start to see several Japanese companies just trying to get out of the business of actually being video game companies and just becoming like EA, just trying to make as much money as possible. Inherently, we have to remind ourselves that the origins of most video game companies, particularly in Japan, but around the world, before there were consoles, before there was any concept of video games actually being art, the first concepts were to just make an arcade machine that would steal quarters, and stealing really is the phrase I think to use, out of the hands of little kids. And so if anything, it's just them going back to what their original nature was of trying to extract as much money as possible, one quarter at a time. And if anything, it also kind of points to there is no real definitive answer towards whether you want recurring payments or one-time lump sums as far as economically spending, because in the past arguments have been made for both. They've often said it's better to get recurring microtransactions, and then they've also said in the past it's better to just get an upfront $60 or $70, and now they're definitely trying to do both by selling you a $60 or $70 game. It is definitely worth mentioning and pointing out that this is not that Resident Evil 7 was not a discounted game by any means. If anything, it was kind of short. It was very pretty, but a little short for what it was. As someone who hasn't actually played the game, I can tell you it's a little short because nobody ever shows anything past the first half of the storyline. And it's the second half of the story that was made by the Japanese team, so if the Japanese team had been forced to make a live service game with microtransactions, you would have probably been running around the second half that nobody really remembers or cares about of the game, not the house and not the family so much, that are highly more recognizable. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Shinji Mikami says he wants to make his own game and change development countries. We haven't properly made a game I want him yet, says the Resident Evil director, which he was the director for Resident Evil 2, 3, and writing and directing for 4, so this would be the game that you would have thought would have been really good, but he also directed The Evil Within, which wasn't really that good, and then he handed over the rails for The Evil Within 2 and Ghostwire Tokyo. So, I mean, it would be unfair to call him a hack, but I would say you have to be careful about singing his praises or even really saying he was kind of the maker or director of Resident Evil. I think there were probably other aspects and other people that added more to the group. And in a lot of ways, that is always the case, is that we praise the directors of these video games and the project managers of video games when they by far are probably the least artistic people on the team, and they're really not adding much to it. A director or producer really is just going to keep people on the same page and on budget and on time. That's their skill set. That's what they're supposed to do. They're not going to add anything to the writing, the gameplay mechanics, the stories, the features. They might say yes or no to ideas, but if the team is not interested or smart enough to pitch new ideas, they can't say yes or no to anything. Let's see. Well, this is in a dangerous scenario, certainly. Alright, well, let's activate this by tossing this. This guy doesn't want to do anything. I'm hoping that maybe he'll counter a ability. We have enough to summon one guy, and that's about it. So if I activate this, plus this, and this, he's going to counter that, which will stop that. Which means we'll try that again. Which maybe that means I should have only tried to summon a 2 there, because now I don't have enough things. Yep, I've lost. There's nothing more to do. I do personally hope that Tango Gameworks does get back to maybe doing something like The Evil Within, but they probably need to just reboot the series, or make a different horror series, not reboot Evil Within. They probably need to just abandon Evil Within and then start over again. Very noticeably in Evil Within 1, you are kind of all over the place, and there are just a bunch of set pieces and a bunch of scary scenes that are like connected in no real way. So like, and Evil Within 2 gets to potentially be even more. I have no idea why he surrendered there. Wow, talk about a lucky break. Yeah, Evil Within 2 gets to be even more action focused. Let's see. Sonic Frontiers release date may have been revealed early. Nobody, I think, cares at this point. Final Fantasy XIV's latest patch adds a farming sim and more solo content, if you're interested in that. A Nintendo Treehouse Live featuring Splatoon 3 and Harvestella has been announced. That'll take place tomorrow. I don't know if there really is a lot to expect from Splatoon 3. it'll just be more Splatoon, and I think that's okay. Like, I don't think you really need much more than that. So this was the event, the Gamescom opening night live stream, which John Bomb was calling the ONL, ONL, happened. And there was a lot of announcements, like the Kojima announced that he was doing a podcast, which is fairly crazy, certainly. But I don't know if throughout this news we're going to get anything that is that big of a deal. Basically anything that's announced now that would have been announced in this Gamescom at any point during this Gamescom is something that would have played a better role during the E3 times, but got delayed or pushed for one reason or other during the E3 times, since E3 didn't happen. And always separating out announcements between a boring E3 event or E3 replacement event and a boring Gamescom event is probably better for consumers. Even if it does overall reduce the interest or the amount of announcements in both events. Like, we, as consumers, we really shouldn't be that hyped or interested in game announcements because they come non-stop. As somebody who is looking at the video game news every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there are game announcements that happen all the time, and a large percentage of them actually never come out, get delayed, or don't say anything of any interest at all. A lot of times there are announcements for games that very few people will care about, and you might as well just wait until things are in the shop. Imagine, if you would, a system in which you could see an announcement for every single new product that is going to show up on the shelf in a Walmart Supercenter. How quickly would you get bored of that and be uninterested in that? It just doesn't matter. Like, internally, I'm sure Walmart does have an email list or even videos of every new product that they are putting on shelves, and they're probably even trying to teach the managers to teach the employees how to push certain items on the shelves, but they probably don't even care that much. But as a consumer, it's either on the shelf or it isn't. Same should be true for video games. It's either on the shelf or it isn't. We don't need to be extra hyped around the game. Art is uniquely different in that way, in that they feel the need to hype people up to read books, to watch movies, to watch TV shows. And perhaps that is because art is not a necessity, whereas most things that you would buy in a Walmart Supercenter probably are at least something that feel like a necessity. I won't say you really need everything that's on the shelves, but uniquely toys, Lego doesn't put out entire announcement videos that are as arduous as video game announcements tend to be, with trailers and such. But Lego actually does do quite a bit if you're in the know, but also they don't bother to put out commercials. There is also an odd disconnect in that, because we aren't seeing trailers then being reused as commercials. Probably would be a lot better for YouTube if trailers for video games showed up as commercials a lot more on TV and on YouTube and streaming services, free streaming services. But we don't see that much. That being said, I do also have ad blockers on YouTube's videos, so I don't see any ads. But yeah, it is very weird that they bothered to make these things. And yes, I know they are turned into commercials in some places, but you just don't see it. When I think about video game commercials, usually it's some kind of combined PlayStation ad that's more selling the PlayStation system than any single individual game. I don't know if I've really even seen a lot of like Microsoft Xbox ads or Nintendo ads. Ubisoft I've seen has done some commercials. Yeah. The free advertisement from doing your own live stream probably is a reflection of a laziness or a lack of publishers willing to actually spend money to put commercials further in front of people. It's probably an effective attempt, an effective process to spread word of mouth around the game without actively having to pay for advertisement, which, yeah, video game journalists certainly spread word of mouth around video games non-stop, so they're already getting some level of free publicity from that, which is in part, I imagine, why if all video game journalists went out of business tomorrow, if they just said we cannot afford to make a living writing about video games, then I feel like the video game industry would create some kind of lobby or union or something, some kind of charitable fund to make sure that they stay in business, because they are just acting as advertisement arms of them. Back to Video Games Chronicle articles. Multiverses, latest patch, buffs Finn, Arya, and Harley, and nerfs Iron Giant. I think I said at this point these buffs and nerfs are not really newsworthy. But yeah, I covered that anyways. A game called Lies of P was definitely shown off. It's coming to Xbox Game Pass. It's an action Souls-like game inspired by the story of Pinocchio. So I think you are kind of playing as a Pinocchio. Now, there are aspects of Pinocchio that are public domain, and then there are aspects that are unique to Disney and thus potentially still copyrighted. Jiminy Cricket, I believe, is a Disney creation, so I wouldn't expect to see a Jiminy Cricket. That being said, this is also a very dark looking Bloodborne / Dark Souls game. The aspect of Pinocchio lying isn't even that emphasized. Here we can see he's got a whole bunch of different swords and magic, and I think he's got a metal arm of some sort. Also, he's aged up a lot more than I think Pinocchio was. So yeah, we have a kind of Bloodborne, Dark Souls looking game. Yep. Still gonna get more of those. We have Sniper Ranger on the chat saying yellow, and so I'll say hello back to that. Liza P, like pretty much any Dark Souls game, can end up definitely could end up being more of a new thing, or it could just be more of the same. of an old thing. So, yeah. Let's see. Sniper Ranger goes, ooh, Zodiac. So he's familiar with the deck I'm playing. Not that I'm particularly that familiar with it. Like, I just looked online and copy and pasted effectively. I've gotten pretty good with it. I'm winning a decent amount, but there are also aspects and effects of the cards that I didn't realize I could do even a couple of weeks ago after playing the deck for months. And undoubtedly, you can't help but complain that it is a fairly slow deck. Most of the decks at the higher levels are slow. You can see my opponent here definitely having to do a lot of work, and that slows down the gameplay quite a bit. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Bungie shows off Destiny 2's Lightfall expansion and confirms its release date. It will launch in February of 2023, February 28th of 2023, for anybody interested. Destiny 2 has released on the Epic Games Store with a free 30th anniversary pack, which must be the 30th anniversary of not Destiny 2 or Epic Games. It has to be a 30th anniversary for the I don't know what it would be the 30th anniversary for. Even the creators of Destiny, I don't think are that old. Yeah. If Bungie maybe... Yeah, Bungie makes Destiny, so maybe Bungie technically is 30 years old. But Destiny as a game is definitely not 30 years old. And the Epic Games Store is definitely not 30 years old. But you also have to remember that if it is a case that that Bungie is 30 years old, they spent the large amount of their time in making Halo games before they made Destiny. Sniper Ranger says, oh, you like Omni Negates. Naz, and then he said, nah, Zodiac handled my butt in the past. I don't even know what Omni Negates is. It sounds like something that might be interesting or useful. Alright, first things first. We'll draw some cards and see if anybody wants to counter that. Then we'll activate this. Then we'll destroy all the spell and trap cards. This may be a problem. I guess we'll toss this one, destroy this, and we'll destroy face down. A monster spell trap negate is an Omni Negate. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. I haven't learned all the lingo of Yu-Gi-Oh! I guess I would definitely agree. Yes, I like in general, I like the concept of being able to negate pretty much everything. I don't see how most people wouldn't like that. Options and card draws are your main goal in any collectible card game. Is that, can I get more options? Can I draw cards to give me more options? The more options available, the better off you'll probably be. Usually cards are balanced to a certain level that if you are given more options, they're not as strong of a card. Definitely still have a case. So this one I would have to attack this one. So I have no idea what to do here. Which one to destroy? Just start with the one that's slightly bigger. He says, Borrower Lord Dragon keeps counters even if you destroy the equip. Boilerland Drag is an Omni Negate, by the way. Well, we got rid of it. And then we'll just end the turn because I can't really attack anything. Then hopefully, starting with the next turn, I can activate an ability again. So, attack directly, then use Zeus. Zeus? I don't have a Zeus card. Gonna destroy this one, hopefully. And don't want to activate this card now. You have an XYZ that can attack directly. What? Well, why can it attack directly? Well, why do you think it can attack directly? Once per turn with Zodiac Trident, using one Zodiac, you can control different names. Detach one and destroy. Imperm is a monster negate. Not that XYZ. This card can attack directly. When this card inflicts battle damage, while adds 12 or more materials, you can send as many cards as possible to your opponent's hand. Oh, so this Zodiac Borbo can attack directly. Interesting. I've not been doing anything with this card. It's probably stupid to do this at the moment, but whatever. See, this one can't attack directly, can it? Alright, so interesting. I don't know how I'd specifically play with that, but in the future I will keep that in mind, because I've just always been summoning this one. ASH it. No, ash it. No. What do you mean by ash it? Oh, Ash Blossom can do things. Well, I lost there, but you've definitely, Sniper Ranger here has definitely taught me quite a bit. Yo, your misplays are real. You know what? You're right. Like, I don't pay attention a lot to Yu-Gi-Oh! It is just the background noise while I'm covering the video game news. But you definitely have taught me a lot, and I would, and I definitely want to thank you for that. That I didn't realize Ash Blossom did other things other than cancel effects. I didn't realize that that the Borbo could attack directly. So yeah, that probably is why my win ratio is lower than the average person playing this deck. And that definitely is an example of the problems with just going online and getting a meta deck and then not really knowing how to play the cards and not really playing the cards. I can give excuses certainly to say that I've played a bunch of really old, like, Game Boy Yu-Gi-Oh! Card games that barely had anything to do with how the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game plays now. But I've definitely been out of it for quite a long time. So these are all new cards to me. These are all new strategies to me. I am lucky that it is lucky that I am even as successful as I am. Sniper Ranger is saying, yeah, I got you. You good, bro. You have Zeus, right? Zeus. There's this card that I sometimes can summon, but I don't know even how you can summon this one. Sometimes it lets me, and then sometimes it doesn't. And if you have if an XYZ monster battled this turn, you can also summon Divine Arsenal Zeus, using one XYZ as a control monster. So yeah, I almost never try and summon after the first play. So that's probably where I'm screwing up also. Let's see, do I want to activate that? I'll say no. Send that to the graveyard. Particularly the XYZ cards, I have not paid a lot of attention to. I've only thought of them as cannon fodder to summon this guy, Tri-Brigade Shoragi. And so he was definitely my main strategy character. Okay. Attack with an XYZ with 2 or more materials from the main phase summon. Is what he's saying. Okay. Attack with XYZ with 2 more materials, then main phase 2 summon. Yeah, that's what I just figured out. Yeah. So I want to toss this guy. Then. So what's the order now? I guess the order is this one first. And what is this guy's ability? Let's summon the other guy. I don't want to do that. So 4, then I guess I want number 1 first, second. And then activate this ability and just toss that to then attach that here. Then I want this guy third. Then we activate that and toss that one to destroy that. Which this pattern is way better and is giving me a lot more value. Of course, now the question is, should I toss a card to destroy that face down card, or should I just risk it? So I want to end with Warbow. Now, the question is, do I want to toss this or wait a turn? I think we just wait a turn. So we attack directly here. Then we go over to main phase 2, which Sniper was telling me about main phase 2, but I already knew that. And then that lets me summon that, okay, but arguably, I don't know if that's actually much of an improvement, because that's 300 less. Detach 2 materials and send all other cards on the field to the graveyard. Would I want to do that? No. If another card you control is destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects, you can attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra decks to this card. So he says that cubic monster cannot be destroyed by battle. Which cubic monster are they talking about? I would summon Zeus in defense. Why summon him in defense? Use their first effect in your opponent's turn. Okay, what is this first effect you're going to do? We'll see. Okay, I guess we can detach Probably these, because I don't think they matter. And then I don't think I need to chain that effect. Did that end the turn? I don't know if that ended the turn or if something else happened, or if he just didn't have anything else to do. Alright, well, let's see. I think I can just play fairly obviously here. Summon this one. Activate this. Toss this. Add this to the field. And this should probably just win the game for me, I think, at this point. Because I can now activate this and toss 4 out. And probably doesn't really matter which 4 get tossed out. And then bring that to the field. Don't get rid of anything. Activate this effect over here to toss another 4. Let's see. Summon another one of this. Says, yeah. Sniper Ranger here is saying I didn't end the turn. I didn't think I ended the turn, but it kind of felt like I could. Let me just check this too. Yep, nothing new or special to summon here, and I don't think activating this. He's saying just be careful with Zeus, because you'll get rid of your own cards too. Yep, that definitely is something I'll have to learn. But to potentially have a clear the field card at your beck and call a lot more often really fills in a gap as far as this deck, as far as how I've been playing it. So Sniper Ranger here has held my hand and taught me how to play this deck way better. Which is yay. Maybe I'll probably not by the end of this month. I probably won't make it to Diamond, and the awkward backwardness of Platinum being below Diamond. But if I can get to Platinum by the end of this month and end at Platinum, I'll be happy enough with that. Of course, I'm not getting through the video game news very well. The first trailer for the former GTA bosses game Everywhere has been revealed. Everywhere, I think, a different game from compared to Everything, which I think is also a game. Let's jump around here. It's a pretty game as far as the visuals, but I'm not sure what it really is supposed to be. Looks like there's cars and racing, and that, and in a lot of ways it kind of feels like it's just trying to be a metaverse. Running, gunning, shooting. I guess you wouldn't describe that as Alright, let's see, what do I want to chain in action here? Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon. Where is Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon? Just being tossed in the... yeah, let's just cancel it. That may be a wrong move. Yeah, I guess you don't call something a Fortnite clone unless it also has building in it, but at this point I don't know if you really need to include the building aspect in Fortnite when describing Fortnite, since it's not even really in the game, in the main game anymore. Yeah, trying to make a game called Everywhere that is a little bit of everything is definitely a great way to screw up. I think here I'm gonna probably just win because he's gonna surrender or have a network disconnection, whatever. And I just opened all of these legacy packs, and I'll probably have another 10 by the end of today's stream at this rate. Let's see. Dune Awakening's first teaser trailer has been shown, which I'd like a Dune game to succeed. I'd like anything Dune to succeed. There's just so much passion behind the Dune series amongst its fans, of which I don't even count myself as one of the fans, but I could see myself trying to get into it and trying to enjoy it. Honestly, I think there's it's very well maybe too complicated, the Dune series, for fair weather fans or new fans to get into. So there's like a sandworm eating an entire ship or facility, which you would have to assume that happens. I think I vaguely recall hearing somewhere that the sandworms are kind of like babies and small near where the people hang out, and they can get way bigger further and deeper into the desert. Alright, that's an interesting trailer. I don't know what the actual gameplay mechanic of fighting a giant sandworm would be. Sniper Ranger, I skipped over some of his suggestions, says, I'm thinking about getting back into Fortnite. What advice do the news before you start a duel? Yeah, I should. I definitely am struggling with keeping it all together. Particularly in Hearthstone, back when I was playing Hearthstone, there was a lot more room to get distracted and like talk about something while the other player was playing. But the 30-second or before you surrender aspect really screws that up in this. Did I discard? Yeah, I think I already did, so I don't want to do any more. Alright, so let's try this again. And this one will be a more straightforward experience, because I won't be able to do anything extra. These other guys. But I still think it's probably the smart move to summon them all, just to add more to the field. It's definitely better to summon the boar back than it is to just use the dry deck to kill itself. Yeah, this game, it does kind of require my full attention, and And arguably, I'm not sure I really want to give it my full attention. I need to figure out what the amount of news, because it really isn't going to be a one-to-one story either. It would be stop playing for 5 to 10 minutes. Oops. Darn it, darn it, darn it. I know what I did wrong there. I attacked and then I didn't summon the Zeus. I needed to have gone to phase 2, and I just ended the turn because I stupidly am so used to just ending the turn. A game called Lords of the Fallen reboot has been announced for PC and next-gen consoles. I don't recognize a game called Lords of the Fallen. Apparently it was an action RPG in 2014. Yeah, arguably, I would, if I was just more interesting, or I could make the news more interesting, I'd get rid of the Yu-Gi-Oh aspect completely. But I also do still somewhat enjoy playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and don't really have a time to do both separately. Sony has announced a DualSense Edge controller, a new pad revealed at the Gamescom opening night, which, if this has all the features of the most recent DualSense controller and adds the pad back, then maybe it doesn't have the back pad like before. Is this going to have the force feedback features, would be my question. Let's see. It also might be that there's very little improvement here. Ironically, I would say, let's see. Can I bring anything more to the field, or should I bring anything more to the field? I think, yeah, probably just summon this here. You activate this here. You toss that. Put that on the field. I'm just gonna try and risk it and hope I get enough cards in the graveyard. Activate this, even though it doesn't do anything. But it shouldn't do too much. Give these 4. Summon this. Yeah, you've suggested discarding a couple times. I know I'm not reading all this. Sniper said, I know, but after would be a good time because you have nothing to worry about afterward. And see what I mean. A discard now, you literally have your opponent in a tight spot. Like, twice you've said discard. Do you mean by using this? Because that's about the only way I can see that I can discard. Should link summon 2 first. Why? Then link summon 3. Okay. So if I was to link summon a 2 right now, I just don't see the value in that. there possibly was a way to win here in the first try. But I didn't find it. I did screw up. The problem with this controller being announced this late is that we are now at a point where all controllers should be split in the middle, should have wrist straps on them, and should be designed to be played with VR as much to be played without VR. I'm actually a little surprised we haven't seen a controller that disconnects and reconnects into each other. But Nintendo is right with the Joy-Cons. Having a variable width in between the controllers for different people's shoulders and broadness. So gotta play here. Like, they aren't right about a lot of things about the Joy-Cons, but them being separated is the right move. So it seems very odd to me to announce a new thing like this when the PlayStation VR like they already have VR controllers designed. They should be all in on those VR controllers. This DualSense Edge, I guess, is supposed to be the equivalent of the... Let's see if we can summon something else. I mean, I guess I can. Alright, let's see what happens if we go ahead and do this now. Would that ability have let me summon something else? I guess it would have. And then that would have let me summon something else here, like that. Nope, that's not enough. That one, and then that one. Yeah, I don't know what the value of doing that would have been. And I don't think going backwards makes sense, and I don't think summoning A4 makes sense. So something I did was wrong compared to what Sniper Ranger is telling me. Sniper Ranger is on the chat, and the chat is 30 seconds delayed, so by the time I've made a decision, he's not seen it. Regardless, I'm fairly certain he'll win in the next turn. What does this ability do? Special summon the beast. Yeah, the features of the DualSense Edge is ultra customizable controllers, remap and deactivate specific buttons, fine-tuning your aim stick. A lot of this stuff starts to make a lot of the console gaming feel a lot more like PC gaming, where you're not on so much of an even playing field with the other players that you might be playing with. That may have been the wrong time to activate this trap. Hmm. Hmm. Sniper Ranger says if I can play your deck, I can show you a few combos. I don't know how you can play my deck. I don't think deck sharing is something built into Yu-Gi-Oh! Yet. There's a lot of features in Yu-Gi-Oh! That just aren't there. So, yeah. Unless you can tell me specifically how to do that, I don't know of a way that happens. Like, even playing people on a friendly game is just something that doesn't really work with Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment. It's just not worth your time to try and set up a friendly game. They just haven't added those features, which is a shame. They should add those features. Right. So unless he plays a trap here that destroys everything on the field, I have a hard time believing I'll fail. But honestly, he should probably just surrender if that's the case. Yeah, even surrendering in this game really sucks because you don't get the rewards if you surrender, so you have to just let your opponent defeat you. And if your opponent decides to just draw it out and drive you crazy, that's annoying. We don't have a lot of daily quests that require you to play a lot. So the idea of like playing a certain number of spells or traps is at such a small number that most players don't try to waste people's time by doing that. There we go. That'll give us a level of safety with that spell. Unless he activates it and it does something. The DualSense controller will have the ability to save multiple control profiles. On the controller user interface, a dedicated function button allows you to easily adjust your setup while focused. There's changeable stick caps and back buttons. 3 types of swappable things. There are replaceable stick modules, which is interesting, but arguably if they just used magnetic stick modules instead of physical contact potentiometers in the stick modules, that would probably work. Anyways, built-in DualSense wireless controller features retain the signature comfort and immersive experience of the DualSense. I think Sony really needs to get away from the DualSense brand of their controllers and needs to give a new name to their controllers. I think that would potentially work too. Uniquely, I don't see I don't see anything talking about force feedback on this. Alright, so we made it up to rank 1. Let's take Sniper's advice somewhat, because previously in streams for the past couple of months, I have just gotten to a certain point and said, alright, let's just cover the news. And that's basically what I'm doing now, but maybe I'll jump back into a game after it. Sniper also said this all I have is a PS4, which, okay, that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna hate on people because they're not part of the PC master race or any of that silliness, or hate on people because they have an Xbox over a PlayStation or anything. If anybody should be hated on, I should be hated on because I have a Nintendo Switch, and A, I can't make any footage of it without fear of it being claimed by Nintendo through YouTube, and B, I don't have any free time to play video games on top of video games, so I've barely done anything with the Switch. I started playing Breath of the Wild probably a month ago and got halfway through and then got bored with it. Or got busy. I'm not really bored with it. Hogwarts Legacy's new gameplay trailer shows off the Dark Arts, if you're interested in checking out that video from Video Games Chronicles. Sonic Frontiers gets a new story trailer and a confirmed release date. Yeah, my point there is, if anybody deserves to be hated on, it should be people who are rich enough to own a console and not play it. Unfortunately, that is the case for people as they get older anyways, though, is that they have less energy and less time. Return to the Monkey Island will be released next month. You pre-order customers will get a horse armor with no practical use. I don't think there's really anything else new to say about Return to Monkey Island. There's still some claim that some people don't like the art style for Return to Monkey Island, but it looks fine enough for me. I really like, if the art style is bad and the writing and the puzzles are good in Return to Monkey Island, it's going to be a massive success in my book. What would be much more of a problem is if there are kind of bad, difficult to figure out puzzles, or not that many puzzles, or the writing isn't that good. Which that is a real risk, certainly. It's been a long time since Ron Gilbert actively wrote or made anything from Monkey Island. He made like Monkey Island 1 and 2, but there's been about 4 or 5 other Monkey Island games that really haven't had his input. And there's probably been about 20 to 30 years in between the last time he worked on a Monkey Island game. He may very well have just gotten lucky in making Monkey Island 1 and 2 and may not have the chops anymore. The new Tales from the Borderlands gets its first trailer and release date, which I still feel like it's a little bit weird to release yet another Borderlands game. It's also a little weird that Randy Pitchford, which is being labeled as Gearbox's boss, although he doesn't even own the company anymore, would show up, because it just doesn't feel like he needs to be involved. And even as a presenter in the storyline, I just don't know if there's as a presenter of a new game, I don't know if he adds anything positive to it when they could have just brought out somebody new. Looking at this Borderlands, new Tales from the Borderlands game, it looks like it's new characters in a new kind of time frame. I'm not seeing anybody that's recognizable. Interesting idea to have a character effectively stuck in a wheelchair, but since this is going to be one of those Telltale type games, all the action that's really being shown right now are actually more cutscenes than anything else. So yeah, this looks nice. It looks okay. Like, I don't see anything here that's terrible. It definitely feels like they're not going to show you any of the heads-up display or the dialogue choices, which is what most of this is going to be. It was in the old Tales from the Borderlands series that they killed off Scooter as a character because the the employee who voiced Scooter at Gearbox was sick for a very long time, and I think he eventually died fairly soon after they killed him off as a character. But that also does create a problem, and the Borderlands problem increasingly is going to be that it constantly wants to add new characters and make some of them very interesting, and then it forgets about them and doesn't do anything with it. There is no through line of a Duke Nukem type character in the Borderlands series that is as strong. There is Brock and the Firehawk as characters, and really they're trying to push Tiny Tina as the through line character that's most interesting. Sniper Ranger says Borderlands 2 looks fun. It is. I've covered it on my channel. Borderlands 3, not as big of a seller. The problem certainly is that they took a decent amount of time, but they could have taken a little bit more time between Borderlands and Borderlands 2, and then they took way too small of an amount of time between Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel and Tales of the Borderlands, and then Borderlands 3, and then from Borderlands 3 we've had Tiny Tina's Adventure, and then reselling the DLC from Borderlands 2 that is the Tiny Tina's Adventure predecessor, and then now it's new Tales from the Borderlands. So they have like 6 things in a row. It is also a weird situation generally in that Borderlands as an intellectual property is owned by 2K. It's made by Gearbox in Dallas at the moment, but it very possibly might be moved to a different company at any point, either Gearbox in Quebec, Canada, or a completely different developer. The Gearbox company, both the Dallas office and the Canada office, have been purchased by Embracer Group. Randy Pitchford sold the company, amongst causing many controversies we don't have to go over again, and left himself in selling the company to the Embracer Group as the boss. He negotiated that, but he's really more of the boss focused on making a Borderlands movie, which in the middle of this pandemic and everything, there has been no new news for this Borderlands movie. So who knows if that ever comes out. Again, I'm not even sure a Borderlands movie really makes the most amount of sense. You basically need a series of movies. Sniper said, have you talked about the new ban list in the news? I looked at it. I'm not sure I fully understand it. What's weird there is it feels like if you had a ton of gems, or if you wanted to spend a lot of money, which I wouldn't recommend for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because Yu-Gi-Oh's so generous with giving you free packs anyways, it's just not really worth it to buy $60 worth of gems and buy more packs. But if you had a ton of gems, or if you want to spend money to get gems, now would probably be the time before the ban list goes in effect to open packs and get cards, because there is a bonus of 20 crafting points for any card that becomes forbidden, which really there's only 4 or 5 cards that become forbidden anyways, but that would give you an extra bonus certainly. It probably in most collectible card games is the best time to buy new cards is right when the ban list is about to be changed or implemented. Usually that happens also when there are new cards. Notably here, there was an announcement to change the banned forbidden list and limited list with no connected expansion really. Like that, they're not saying that there's a new expansion based off of the Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh card game where they're going to bring in new cards and that's going to change the meta. They're not saying that they're bringing in anything new that's exclusive to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters. But yeah, that is kind of where we're at. It is my understanding, in particular, that there is about 7,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters, and in the main game, in the Japanese collectible card game, there are 10,000 cards. So there are 3,000 cards worth of expansions, which is probably 2 or 3 years in minimum of expansions that they either need to bring over to the Western Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game, or they need to bring over to Duel Masters at a higher rate to get Duel Masters in line with the Japanese card game. And they have been very slow to do that. In a lot of ways, Yu-Gi-Oh!, even though it says it's season 8 right now, it's really just been a case of a beta for the first 6 months, where features are just still being added, which arguably that would make it an alpha, not even a beta. And it's still missing several features. And that will be the thing certainly that kills Duel Masters, is that they've announced a different Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duels, so maybe they shift all their focus on that and abandon Master Duel, which would be crazy to do, but they kind of already had done that with like Duel Links as such. Let's hop into a game here. Like if I can get 3 victories today, that would be great, but I'll probably have to wait. By the way, you need all of your beast monsters in your grave as fast as possible, says Sniper Ranger. I don't know how to do that any faster than I already am doing it. Like that's pretty much the entire strategy of the deck, and I think I'm mostly playing it well. Let's see. Since I went first here, maybe I shouldn't have brought that guy to the field. Yeah, that could have been a mistake. Well, let's play it out anyways. Link 2 first, he says. Interesting. Then Link 3, trust me. If I toss this, could I toss something else? No, I can't. Basically have nothing on the field. I'm going to play too aggressively here and put everything on the field on the first turn just so he can destroy everything with some board clears and ruin everything. Okay, let's see. Toss this one. Just add that. Okay. So, am I supposed to wait here? I wonder. Let's see. If I was to summon this, I could summon one more and summon 3. And that would leave this card for later. And maybe that is the trick here. Let's try it. That's the wrong place to put that. Hmm. Says Sniper Ranger, 30 seconds delay. He's saying, no, don't do that. No, no, no. So I screwed up there. Yeah, well, I think we're still okay here, but we tried something different. Hmm. Hmm. I am generally a little bemused as to what you can really do on the first turn uh, when you go first. Anyways, it's so limited with this deck, which is probably limited with most decks. Still got a lot of news, so I can't just keep it separated. I'll try and keep it more separated next stream. The gory new Callisto Protocol gameplay footage shows off the current generation gameplay. I'm pretty well already sold on Callisto Protocol, so like as a Dead Space spiritual successor from some of the creators of the original Dead Space, that is being directly competed against with them making a remake of Dead Space and not really having any idea or anybody with any real passion, I think, in charge of the remake of Dead Space. This definitely looks like Dead Space and its gameplay and looks fine. Look at that, it worked out. Worked out because the opponent surrendered. So I may be stupid, but I'm at least lucky. Let's see. Sniper Ranger said, wait, the trap, the trap. Your misplays are making me die of laughter. He says, yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't pay attention to this that much. Here we have the footage of this guy sliding for a very long time in what looks like kind of a quick time event, gory death sequence. Which I wonder if that means that there's going to be a lot of those kind of quick time event death sequences. They only announced the remake of the Dead Space this after the Callisto Protocol had been announced and tried to suck the oxygen out of the room, as it were, from so people would forget about the Callisto Protocol. And in a lot of ways, a lot of people did forget about the Callisto Protocol. Sniper Ranger goes, wow, lucky. Gotham Knights gets a new release date in Villains trailer. It'll be released 4 days earlier. Yeah, still not really sure what this game is. As we've only seen like character trailers left and right, and the one gameplay I've seen really just makes it feel a lot like an Arkham Asylum, Arkham Knight game, which they probably don't want you to remember that Arkham Knight exists. I suppose being shown the villains, this might tell you if this is supposed to be set in somewhat the same universe as the Arkham Asylum universe. I don't think it quite is, because that Harley Quinn is not really the Harley Quinn that was in the original Arkham Asylum games. But so much time has happened and changed that Harley Quinn's appearance has changed. And it's kind of circular. Harley Quinn was added in the Batman animation series, and then the Arkham Asylum series gave her more of a realistic pigtails appearance, instead of looking like a clown, or dressed up like a clown, and just a stylized pigtails, clownish red and black style. And now it's kind of depicting her as even more realistic than most, which I don't know if they really need to go into hyper realism when you're also fighting Clayface and Mr. Freeze, who are still cartoonishly villains. And she does, at some point, I guess Harley Quinn, get in a different outfit. Sniper Ranger seems like one of those story games that your choices matter. I love those. No, Gotham Knights is not that. It's much more like an Arkham Asylum game. It has that combo beat 'em up system where you have to press smash buttons a lot to beat up enemies. I assume you're going to wander around and find something like Riddler trophies again. It really is just Arkham Asylum, except for Batman is not being advertised as being in the game, but I still wouldn't be surprised one bit if he does show up in the game as at least a support character, if not playable character, because none of the secondary Bat family characters are that interesting. Robin, Red Robin, Raven, or Batgirl. I don't think Raven is one of the characters. There's 4 of them. And then it's promising some kind of co-op gameplay, and I don't fully understand how that's going to actually happen. This was probably one of the biggest weird announcements that happened during the presentation yesterday. The cult 80s horror movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space is getting its own game. It's a 3 versus 7 asymmetrical multiplayer game that will be released in 2023. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is not a good movie. It's only a cult classic, I think, because back in the time that people were had the kind of free time to go to movies on Fridays and just goof around, they would be willing to watch these kind of ridiculous movies, and then the next generation of cult fans of Killer Clowns would have caught it on cable TV when people didn't have had a ton of free time. Now people really don't have the kind of free time that they'd watch such an awful movie. I don't have any particular love for it. I've sat through it maybe once or twice. In a lot of ways, it's like the Rocky Horror Picture Show and several other things, except for Killer Clowns doesn't try to connect with any kind of sub-fandom other than the horror fandom or cheap B-movie horror fandoms. I have to assume that this was the outcome of some cheap licensing and maybe even an attempt to renew a copyright and maintain a copyright around Killer Clowns, which may be getting very close to being public domain. I don't even know if these Killer Clowns that are being shown really are that accurate to what they look like in the movie. Remember, there was the Friday the 13th game, and then there was a let's see, I don't know if there was a Freddy Krueger game. I don't think there was. There wasn't a Hellraiser game. There's Jason with the hockey mask. That game got made, and then the license and rights to that got muddied because basically the game allegedly wasn't owned by the person who sold the rights to the people to make the game, and so then they had to make a different game, or they're in development of a different game based on the Evil Dead series. So yeah, I think it's Friday the 13th and then Evil Dead. I don't think the Halloween guy from the Halloween series has a game that was ever made. If it was, it wasn't much of anything. But yeah, there was this trend for the past, I would say, 6 to 8 years of taking old horror movies and trying to make these multiplayer games. That people saw the success of Dead by Daylight, and arguably Dead by Daylight is doing it a lot smarter by not really having their product tied into a license and just having generic monsters and horror experiences. It would be interesting if that's the way that horror movies went, in that we stopped seeing the B tier and the cheap budget horror movies being made, and instead we just had multiplayer games with horror creatures that have that same experience. But then you think about a low budget, kind of niche new movie called Terrifier, which is a clown that just cannot be killed, that is stalking these two girls. And most notably, at one point in Terrifier, a clown captures one of the girls, hangs her upside down by her legs, and then uses a chainsaw to cut her in half from her groin to her chest/neck, which was pretty gory and horrific. I don't think you could show that in a video game and not cause controversy, where you can show that in an indie movie and not cause any real controversy. Sniper Rover said, not Gotham Knights, the one before that. Are you talking about Callisto Protocol? Because that's an action horror game. Did I look at a game between Callisto Protocol and Gotham Knights? I don't even remember. So yeah, I particularly when you look at like the Saw, when you look at the Saw movies, those are movies that really could have been video games, and they did make 2 Saw video games, but they didn't really sell that well. So we've yet to see an actual success where a low budget horror movie can be replaced with a medium budget or low budget video game. But I do think we probably will start to see more of that, as it just gets more and more expensive to make movies, and fewer people actually want to actually watch movies in theaters. Yep. It would be interesting, certainly, if theaters could figure out a way, or video game developers could work with theaters to figure out a way to put gameplay on the screen of a movie theater while people in the seat are actually somewhat controlling things and playing. Kind of like a LAN party with highlights on the movie theater, but something a little bit more interactive. You'd almost certainly have to have a screen in front of you, or everybody would have to be working towards the same goal. It would be a difficult challenge, certainly, to pull off, to like seamlessly merge 100 people playing a game in the theater and make it feel like most of the time your actions in that game are the actions that are being shown on screen. And it would be kind of impossible to pay attention to playing a game and watching it on the screen at the same time. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says, following years of delays, Dead Island 2 finally has a release date. The zombie action RPG will be released in February of 2023. And they put out a new trailer to re-announce themselves, February 3rd, 2023. According to the trailers, it will be available for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox X and One, Stadia, and PC via the Epic Games Store. Seems like they have actual gameplay. This is where that whole Gamescom opening night live event was shown. Much bigger stage. I actually haven't seen any of the footage from opening night live. Much bigger stage, much flashier than previous post lockdown events. Uh, definitely, it definitely feels like some of the previous events looked bad. They looked too small and they didn't look flashy enough to feel impactful. Looking at this gameplay footage, it looks like there's some of the original characters from the original Dead Island game and generic improvements, certainly, but it definitely will be heavily compared to something to Dying Light, which is the developers of the first Dead Island game, which is the only good Dead Island game, if there is even a single good Dead Island game, went on to make Dying Light and Dying Light 2 in the same time it took them to struggle to get Dying Light 2 to be almost released, or Dead Island 2 to be almost released. Let's see. This might be a surrender, says Sniper, since Link monsters can only be in attack mode. I almost never use defense mode anyways. But yeah, I do know that this guy drives me crazy. Alright. Let's see what we can do with our newfound thing. This is gonna have to be the last thing because I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom here pretty soon. I've played too much. I haven't gotten anywhere with the news. First Dying Light 2 single-player DLC has been revealed, so direct competition again between Dead Island 2 and Dying Light 2. This is called Bloody Ties. This should probably be a particularly good point to not pay that much attention. So people are fighting each other in an arena, which is a fairly simplistic DLC. Lies of P had its gameplay reveal trailer and 2023 release date. It will be available for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles, including Game Pass. I don't know if this is the Pinocchio character you play as. I don't think it is. I think this is the Pinocchio character you play as. And he definitely looks younger in this thumbnail than he did from behind in the actual trailer. A fantasy RPG called Atlas Fallen has been revealed at Gamescom opening night live. It's coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S and PC in 2023. Fantasy RPG from a Western company. There's few of those, certainly, compared to like Japanese RPGs or Japanese fantasy RPGs. It looks quite brown and has a lot of actions, but I have to assume what I'm seeing here is really just a cutscene, and it kind of feels a lot like let's make Destiny if Destiny was set in a more of a desert and in more of a earthly environment. Definitely not seeing a ton there that interests me. Can't summon monsters unless they're wind monsters. Alright. Then let's not summon. Let's toss. Activate this trap. Sniper Ranger says RPG, yeah, expect high expectations from other people. Yeah. there's a lot of competition amongst RPG games, so high expectations are what should happen. Definitely should be the case. Right. Just keep on trying. I might as well just exhaust as many options now and say I gave it the old college try. I've not been able to find a great strategy against this deck. But I don't know if I can even really expect any deck to be able to beat every other deck. Anyways, as long as we're getting above a 50% win ratio, you should be moving in the right direction. Alright. See if we can just scare the guy. May have to draw more cards. Eliminate most of my cards. I was hoping that I could have activated this ability, but apparently I don't have enough cards on the field. I should have enough. Yeah, Sniper says this is a surrender. But don't I get penalized if I surrender? Shouldn't I just let it let him beat me? Sure, it would save me time to surrender. Let's see. Masahiro Sakurai's new YouTube channel gives us thoughts on game design. Nintendo has let the Kirby and Smash Bros. Creators show prototypes and design documents, which is interesting because one of the GTA creators just got DMCA'd for showing prototypes and design documents around the original Grand Theft Auto game. It does seem odd that with this Gamescom we have one creator starting a YouTube channel and another creator starting a Spotify podcast in Kojima. It does seem like they are either they have a lot of free time or they are actively just distracting themselves and going in a different direction. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the first ever Scottish Game Awards will take place this year. The ceremony will conclude the inaugural Scottish Games Week. So, seems like it's yet another Game Awards event. Or at least awards event. P-Cube Games has been accused of withholding a developer's diversity grant. And then update P-Cube has responded to the allegation. A pair of Indonesian studios have accused the UK publisher P-Cube Games of claiming a diversity grant on their behalf, then withholding the money from them. Toge Productions and Mojiken Studios agreed to deal with P-Cube to handle the console publishing of their upcoming game of space for the Unbound. However, both companies now allege that P-Cube use the fact that the studios are based in Indonesia to get a diversity fund from a well-known console platform. So I'd have to be either Nintendo, Microsoft, or Xbox, then chose not to pass the money on to them. Instead, the studios claimed that P-Cube intentionally withheld information about the grant and used it as leverage for their own commercial gain. Which, arguably, I'm not sure if that isn't legal. Like, it sounds like it would be illegal, but I just don't know. Like, it may be fairly commonplace that these kinds of things happen, where a publisher is given a grant and the grant is supposed to go to the publisher because of some weird way. I'm gonna just cancel this one and this one and hope that that's two that would be helpful. Like, I could see there being grants out there that reward publishers for doing business with smaller countries like Indonesia, or companies in Indonesia. I could also see it being very much the case that in Indonesia and smaller countries that it is fairly common to make accusations or run cons or scams, so I could side with either side here. Sniper Ranger saying, damn the counter. Yeah, this counter really sucks. It's way worse than the rope in Hearthstone, which was really good. Let's see. In a statement to video game console publishers, we have honored all obligations of our publishing agreement and support Togi Productions at every stage of the product development throughout their delays and difficulties. Throwing some shade there. This support has included offering significant further funding over and above grant funding to support development, porting, and making. Togi Productions has sought some time to unilaterally enforce unreasonable revised terms to our agreement, and it is disappointing that as a result of not achieving that, and despite P-Cube's significant efforts to accommodate this, they have sought to deal with the matter in this way. We will respond through the appropriate channels. In a joint statement on Twitter, the studios announced that a space for the Unbound has been delayed until further notice while they try to find a new publisher. This isn't the first time we've had a publisher come off as the bad guy. It is very easy to make the publishers come off as the bad guys, and often they are. Oftentimes they do seem like they are the bad guys, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this isn't some kind of last-ditch effort by the developers of the game, because they've just can't finish the game with the budget and funding they have. Okay. Highly unlikely I'm going to turn this around at this point. Did I summon that? I tried to activate that. Well, I screwed that up in the turn, and that'll be the end of that. Let's see, Hogwarts Legacy Collector's Edition. Unboxing shows off a floating wand, which I assume is done with magnets, which is probably really cool, but unnecessary. The Xbox boss expects that there will be less and less platform exclusives in the future. Microsoft's gaming chief thinks products being multi-platform is better for the industry. Of course, what they often imply when they say multi-platform is just PC and Xbox more than actually caring about whether it shows up on, say, the PlayStation. I have 6 days to do the solo mode, but that's fine. And then we've made some more progress as far as banishing cards and activating effects in the graveyard. Did we activate any other lifetime effects? We're almost to 125 more duels in ranked mode. We're not really that far as the duels level. Yeah, it does kind of feel like most of these will be fully fulfilled by the 1 year mark of playing this game, and I've been playing this game since day one. So at the 1 year anniversary, they're going to probably need to throw in some new lifetime challenges just so we continuously in the second year get gems. It's not like there's a lot of gems you're even getting through these rewards, but there needs to be more, certainly. Alright, now I really cannot play any further, so I'm gonna have to just burn through the news. We haven't even gotten through the Video Games Chronicles articles, let alone the Gamatsu or the GameDeveloper.com or the games that have been released on Steam. Phil Spencer feels good about an Xbox's proposed Activision deal gaining approval, which I assume you would say that even if he didn't feel good. Last of Us Part 1's launch trailer is here ahead of next week's release, if you want to check that out on Video Games Chronicles. The Celtic and Rangers have been confirmed as FIFA partner clubs. Both Scottish teams will see players' scans added to the game and likely their stadiums too. Obsidian's Murder Mysteries Pentiment has received a November release date, which this is a weird looking game. Pentiment, but we'll wait and see how people like it, if people even bother to play it. Sniper says, I guess you're done. Thanks for the news. I'm done with Yu-Gi-Oh! Certainly. But I got probably another 20 to 30 minutes of news if I burn through it really fast. The Everywhere Studio Build a Rocket Boy is not dismissing new tech like blockchain, so yeah. They may make a game in the future that has blockchain in it. Of course, it is the right response to it is definitely the right response to say we're not just immediately dismissing blockchain. Perhaps you say at this moment we have no plans to go into blockchain, but we would consider it in the future. Is probably a slightly better response, but you always want to leave the door open. Sniper Ranger says, well, I'm going to bed, so I'll watch the rest tomorrow. Okay. Well, thanks for being on the chat, Sniper Ranger. You definitely helped me learn quite a bit today. Let's see. Studio Onoma, I've never heard of this studio, could be Square Enix's new Western studio venture. A trademark application for the studio has been filed in Canada. I have no idea why Square Enix would try to make a Western studio when they've actively just sold off the Western studio for the Tomb Raider series and I believe one other series that's pretty big. They previously sold off the Hitman company. And inherently, it feels like Square Enix knows that they're jerks and that they can only survive as a company if they constantly open Western companies, so they can blame those Western companies when they don't sell $1 billion on a game that had no chance of ever making even $100 million. Like they seem to be running effectively a con in some way, even if it is just it not moving money around. It may be moving blame around, in which they are funneling all of their interest, whether it's financial interest or just attention, to Final Fantasy games, and then they either stay silent or sing the praises of the Final Fantasy games, and then they shift all the blame that some of which should go to some of the previous Final Fantasy releases onto the Western companies. Sniper Ranger says, anytime, see you next time. Thanks for watching again. Let's see, Bandai Namco has filed a new Time Crisis and Steel Gunner trademarks, which could just be remakes, could just be ideas that don't go anywhere. Here you can see that the screenshot they've picked for a Time Crisis game looks pretty rough, because I think the last time there was a Time Crisis game was quite a while ago. Yeah, if I read the subtitle here, it says the last game was released in 2015, so you're talking 7 years since the last Time Crisis game, and I imagine it was mostly an arcade game even at that point, possibly a Japanese exclusive arcade game for the most part. And I'm still not really sure if you can bring these kinds of arcade shooters to the console world with the current controllers. You could probably bring it to like a Joy-Con and a Nintendo Switch, but it still probably wouldn't be that fun or interesting. They have a couple of products now that are pretty good about making arcade guns that actually work with computers and act as mice. But there's been no interest as far as Microsoft or PlayStation to have accessories that look like guns, and Nintendo either. Nobody wants that. We are far, far away from a Super Scope or a Zapper. So arcade would be the only place to really have that kind of experience. Plus, there's so many controversies that just constantly happen, particularly in the United States, around guns and shooting. So the idea of coming out with a game that has an actual gun is kind of crazy, and then making a shooter game that doesn't have a gun is somewhat crazy, and it is this kind of arcade style of shooter. So I think it's really a genre that by happenstance is just going to be dead in the water, whether you want it to be or not. Our final Video Games Chronicle article for today says Square Enix has released a 10-minute Forspoken gameplay trailer. Still just trying to remind people that Forspoken is a thing, although I really am still not sure what it is. So then that brings us to the Gematsu articles. High on Life 9 has High on Life has the 9 Torg fight trailer, which seems like you're playing against some kind of robotic bug. High on Life is the weird looking game shooter that has like voice actors from Rick and Morty and is a kind of craziness. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like a Metroid Prime game. Yeah, in the sense that Metroid Prime was in a world with a lot of weird insects and a lot of enemies. This does oddly feel like a Metroid Prime event or a type of game. That being said, I don't know if it will have that Metroidvania type of gameplay. And this guy that you're fighting definitely feels like a space pirate, although the fight seems fairly long. Interesting. It definitely would be interesting to have more of a comedic twist on Metroid Prime and see if that works. I don't know if I believe it would work, because inherently Metroid Prime is kind of a slow, contemplative experience where you kind of think about things and you're researching and learning things. Whereas a Rick and Morty comedy game probably isn't going to be slow and have you think deeply about things. Hard Space Shipbreaker is coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series on September 20th. It's currently available on PC. I haven't heard anybody talk about this game in quite a while. I know a lot of mainstream video game journalists talked about this uh, when it first came out for a couple weeks, but like most games that they talk about, they tend to get bored with it and move on after a week or two. And so maybe there is a fandom that's still playing it, but I imagine it's not that big. The Expanse, a Telltale series, launches in summer of 2023, which I tried to watch the Expanse series on Prime Video and couldn't get past the first couple episodes. And then I skipped to the last episodes and it looked like completely different characters. And this looks like very possibly completely different characters, so it would be a tough one to get into. I've owned and tried to play, I think, pretty much all the Telltale games up to the point where Telltale went out of business and got bought by somebody else. But I definitely think I'd have to skip the Expanse series because I just would be so out of the loop. It'd be very weird to try to play the game and see that story without understanding the events of the story. Here, Gametsu has some more pictures for the Killer Clowns game, which kind of shows you the kids that you would play against them. There's a game called Scars Above, not Stars, SCARS, which has a reveal trailer and screenshots. It might be well, for a second there I thought it might be a point and click adventure game, but I guess it's an action shooter, shooting monsters. I'll watch through the blurred out trailer. Looks fairly pretty in the screenshots, but yeah, definitely feels like it might be just a survival shooter game, or there might be some narrative to it. They're calling it an action adventure game using those tags in Gametsu. The open world fantasy RPG Word Song has been announced by former Bethesda Softworks and Obsidian Entertainment and BioWare staff. What's the name of the company? Something Wicked Games. Which, okay, a AAA open world preternatural RPG. That's how it's being described. Word Songs, WYRD. So is this a Skyrim competitor, or is it something completely different? A little teaser trailer here, not showing you anything as far as announcements. An action RPG game, open world, that definitely gives off the vibes of, hey, let's make something kind of like Skyrim, but let's not just completely clone Skyrim. Here we have a better still shot of what Harley Quinn looks like in her battle outfit in the Arkham Knights game. Yeah, she definitely looks slightly different with the shorter hair now and a different outfit. Northern Song Dynasty set open world action RPG where winds meet has been announced for PC. This definitely feels like kind of a Chinese inspired game. It's holding a baby. The idea of there being good Chinese mythology games is appealing. I have yet to see one, though. I've seen some that look pretty looking visually, but I've yet to see one that manages to succeed in making me want to actually play them, because they get compared to so many bad Chinese games. And see, this, just looking at this trailer, feels a lot like one of the bad Chinese RPG MMOs out there that all look kind of nice in the fight sequence, but are fairly shallow everywhere else. In all fairness, even with like Ghost of Tsushima, it's been decades upon decades of Japanese companies making games or localizing games to not be Japanese before we started to see things like Ghost of Tsushima, where they make something that is very Japanese and they lean heavily into it being Japanese. As far as AAA games, there's always been some niche Japanese games that people have enjoyed in the West, but as far as getting your average Halo bro type player to evolve and potentially play something like Ghost of Tsushima, that is fairly groundbreaking. A gamer bro that started playing Halo on the Xbox, for instance, was not likely to be the same kind of player who would go and play a visual novel from Japan or Final Fantasy from Japan. In the Final Fantasy games, not particularly that Japanese. Park Beyond has been delayed to 2023 and has a modular building trailer. I don't even recognize this game. Warhammer 40k Darktide has a trailer if you want to check that out. I've yet to see a single well-selling Warhammer game for as many as they've put out in the past year. A game called Blacktail launches this winter. Become the guardian of the woods or the terror nightmares are made of. Let's see. So you're some kind of witch with a mask. And you wander around the forest and do a lot of archery, it seems like. So it's bow hunting and witchcraft fighting monsters. Yeah, there might be something to that. I could see potentially being interested there. You'd want a stronger story than what it's implying, and you'd probably want some other items or upgrades. A Nier-inspired hack-and-slash action adventure game called Phantom Hellcat has been announced for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox Series and 1 and PC. Being inspired by Nier is a weird claim to make, certainly, because I don't know what specific aspects of the Nier series you're inspired by, really. Let's see, can we get a more zoomed out look at the character? Yeah. You have characters, you have different kinds of masks. You have maybe a higher action hack and slash experience. Yeah, why do you call this particularly Nier inspired versus calling it, say, Dark Souls inspired? Maybe it's because it's just action sequences when you're fighting the enemies, and then the rest of the game is kind of more walking around an open world and talking to people. There you see some zoomed out 2D side-scrolling 2.5D platforming. Her outfit is not anywhere as crazy or revealing, I would say, than Nier Automata's 2B outfit, although 2B is not actually that revealing as an outfit either. It's just, it looks like lingerie, and that's why it stands out. But yeah, no masks over there, no blindfolds, no crazy genre-changing first action sequences at the beginning are implied. Crossfire X has a Babylon update. I don't think I've ever even heard of this game. A game called Dorfromantik is coming to Switch on September 29th, which is apparently a puzzle strategy game. The Outlast Trials closed beta test set is for October 28th through November 1st, which is this some kind of multiplayer game? It says it's a survival horror game, and I assume it's based on the Outlast series. It definitely looks grotesque and gory from this screenshot, and the trailer is age restricted to YouTube. Yeah, I'm assuming that this is a single player game and just maybe a different continuation of the Outlast series. I have noticed that another game specifically is going out of its way to not call itself like the third or fourth game in the series, and instead is implying that it's kind of a soft continuation, soft reboot. Layers of Fears with an S is the other game I saw like that. A game show themed free-to-play multiplayer first-person shooter called The Finals has been announced for PC, which oddly is another girl with masks running around, and yeah, otherwise I doubt this will be anything that I would ever play because I don't play multiplayer games. In a weird way, you still are running into this situation where a lot of games are coming out just trying to be and feel like Fortnite competitors, that they're just trying to get the kids' attention and they're just trying to get quick success and just rolling the dice on that, when it's highly unlikely that that's actually going to happen. Dead Island 2. I wonder if all 4 of the characters from the original series are coming back, or if only 2 of them are, because I feel like there was a Chinese girl that was good with knives and katana swords, and maybe it's been replaced by this guy. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2 returning characters and 2 new characters, or 4 returning characters and 4 new characters. It could be anywhere in that range. I imagine nothing more. A game called Bullet Soul and Bullet Soul Infinite Burst has been delayed to September 29th. This is a Switch shoot 'em up game. Definitely is still getting more of these ports, with not much fanfare, but they are coming to the West. Genshin Impact version 3.8 3.0 update is now available. Sumiko Garashi Mina de Rhythm Party has been announced for Switch, which doesn't look like anything of interest. I'm trying to burn through all this really fast. I spent too much time playing Yu-Gi-Oh, but I was actually succeeding too, so I appreciate playing. Here's that same story as far as a space for Unbound. We can see what a space for the Unbound looks like a little bit more with this screenshot. It doesn't really feel like it's that complicated of a game for them to be having trouble creating it. Famitsu review scores for issue 1760 are available, with Made in Abyss being the only game they reviewed for giving it a 30 out of 40, which I'm not super surprised that a Made in Abyss video game isn't reviewed that well. Most anime spin-off games aren't that good. An alchemy management game called The Last Alchemist has been announced for PC. It's due out in early access in 2023, which, okay. Looks like maybe there's a little bit more going on than just doing alchemy. It seems more kind of like a adventure Stardew Valley farming game too. The Last Aura Crew launches October 13th. I've never heard of this. Aura Crew is a word. Maybe it's made up. This coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC on October 13th. And it looks like it's a girl in a crown. And giant rat creatures. So kind of a fantasy story of some sort, but maybe also with some computer stuff in it. They're saying it's an action RPG and your choice matters, which, boy, that was a sales point for Telltale games like 10-15 years ago, and we've just gone full circle. The game Pentiment launches November 15th, which here's another screenshot of that. Let's start going through some of the games on Steam. Quick Tower Defenses, no. Guild Wars 2? Interesting. Well, that deserves a YouTube short. We'll put on a follow. Monster Dungeon isn't coming soon, so no on that till it comes out. Snacky Tower can be a no. Desktop Girlfriend. Here we have another adult game that is tagged with sexual content and nudity, and yet the uncensored patch is being hidden, and it's not really a game. And this is once again one of those low effort, more Western games than, or a Chinese game, I guess in this case, that is just using 3D models and not trying to do anything much. And those will be the little peaks I see inside the realm of adult content games while still having the adult content games filtered. This game, Delusional, suffers from dark screenshot syndrome. Queen's Wish 2, The Tormentor. Looks like nothing. AVA Global. Think we can dismiss there, but you know what, I'm gonna give it a follow just to be certain. Gamescom event here. Sale, something. Maybe not really so much a sale. We have a strategy positional placement game. But, yeah. It's cutesy in its visuals. You know what? I'm going to leave this for a YouTube short, but I'm not going to put it on the fault list because it's not my type of game. God's Domain. Online fantasy virtual reality game. Looks terrible. Get into the backrooms. Still getting these mean backrooms games. This looks terrible. Just have to be really quick as far as burning through all of these games that came out on Steam. Berserker, a Viking board game. Yeah, we'll check that out. I'm constantly going to struggle to try and find variety in what I put on YouTube Shorts. This game does not support English, it's a French only game. It might have caught my attention otherwise. Just burn through this. And here we have Mirror Beauty, which this was one we already even talked about, but oddly seems to now be sold in a censored version, which maybe it was before. Yeah, I don't remember if this was the game that was already sold in a censored version, or maybe they removed it and put on a different version, or maybe there are just like straight up two different versions of games a lot on Steam. One that's in the adult section and one that isn't. I don't think that's how Steam works, though. I don't think that you can have two games by the exact same name show up one in the adult section and one otherwise. That'd be kind of silly to go that route. Iron Order 1919. Nah, I think I was saying no to that. Some of these games do feel like they're ones I've already seen because they were listed as coming soon. Here we have another low effort dating sim game that has an 18 plus uncensored game, uncensored patch, I imagine. Although, particularly in this case, you can tell it's not much of a game, really. Not even showing you the match 3 RPG elements of the game. Let's. And we finally are back to the point where screenshots aren't loading. And they really don't want to load today. Well, I'll put this on the follow list. Better safe than sorry. Yeah, at this rate, I'm not going to get through my dailies with my mobile game that I play, Destiny Child, the lewd mobile game. This My Sticker Book may be something. I may even do a YouTube short around it. By the time that I get around to doing YouTube shorts, I'll probably see some reviews to point me in a better direction as to whether I should or not. Yeah. I have like 30 minutes to get through all of this. Burn through all of this fairly quickly. Sufficiently, you can see that the Gamescom announcements did not reduce the number of just generic games that came out on Steam. Here we have a game called Drag Deal, which I guess is a simulation of doing drag. It does not look good visually polished wise. And at a certain point, why would you need a simulation of doing drag? I could see liking that, but at a certain what you're getting deep into certainly is the culture of drag and not trying to make yourself when you're a male dressing as a female, which is pretty much all drag is. I don't know very many females dressing as males in drag, but there probably are some. You just don't see it I don't see it that often. But the general idea when doing drag is to not look that realistic like a actual female, and instead be over the top and have the big hair and crazy makeup. This doesn't look like a good game embracing that idea, but I think it is somewhat embracing that idea. For video games, though, if you just were kind of more transgendered and wanted to experience the experience of being in a different character's body, if play as a female if you're a male, or vice versa, you would want it to look realistic in that scenario, because that is a very different scenario than wanting to do drag. Drag is not transgendered. People who do drag aren't inherently transgendered and don't want to just look like the other gender, because you wouldn't get on stage and bring attention to the fact that you're cross-dressing if you were transgendered. For the most part, most transgender people wouldn't want that attention. Let's see. We're almost through all the games on Steam. particularly if I don't bother to actually put a comment on most of these games. And there might be something to this, even though it is really pixely. Might be kind of a throwback experience. Still, the vast majority of these games are very generic and uninteresting. SD Gundam Alliance. That definitely should get a spotlight. YouTube short. Retro Invasion. Just looks like a Doom clone. Then Project Everblood. Looks like nothing. Alright, so because of the event, we still have plenty of Gematsu articles. Adventure Academia, The Fractured Continent has a demo launching August 25th in Japan. This doesn't look like a game that particularly interests me. EU Din Chronicles 100 Heroes has a Gamescom trailer, and I assume 100 Heroes is a spin-off of EU Din Chronicles. And that's not the only game called EU Din Chronicles, well, although it might be. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R adds 4 characters here, if you want to check that out. One would assume that all the characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or pretty much all of them, will show up. The Last of Us Part 1 launch trailer is visible if you want to check that out. A game called Blind Fate Ito no Yami launches September 15th, which is a robotic samurai fighting a robotic tiger. At least that's what that thumbnail is. Yeah, I don't know if this is a fighting game or if this is a kind of platforming. It seems like you jump into different versions of reality. We're calling it an action adventure game. Yeah, it does kind of look like it's a hack and slash 2.5D game. Forspoken has a gameplay overview trailer, which if I did have 10 minutes to watch the gameplay overview, that would probably give me a better idea of what the game actually is. In a lot of ways, it might not be too far off of something like Prototype, which I guess maybe they didn't feel like they could really make any more Prototype games. Like, you could definitely take the idea of being able to jump around and do a whole bunch of actions like in Prototype and turn it into a game where somebody has a lot of magical abilities. And that it really does kind of feel like Prototype. I would say that some of the Spider-Man actions also, the actions in the Spider-Man games might be slightly influential, or Prototype may have influenced some of the Spider-Man games. The game Fear Effect Reinvented has a teaser trailer, which I feel like there was rumors that this was coming out. No, I guess it was announced in August of 2017. So we've gotten to the point where something got announced and then it got incredibly delayed to the point where I thought it was just a rumor and never officially confirmed. This is more of a soft CG, almost cartoony art style, and definitely just looks like it's a cover-based shooter. It being called Reinvented and then seeing that trailer, though, this, as far as its gameplay mechanics, feels like it could use some polish and improvement. And I would say this whole back armor that she's wearing needs something on it. It needs more color and more display. Sure, when she's in cover you see a little bit of cleavage and that's fine, but the solid armor in the back needs something, and then when you get shot and take damage, it's just a big old ball of blood overlaying her, and that needs improvement too. So as far as trailers, that's the first one I've ever seen that needed that much improvement. A otome / young maiden visual novel called Majestic Magical is coming to Switch on December 22nd in Japan, with I guess 2 different covers. Rifted the Necrodancer reveal trailer and screenshots, which I assume this is a Guitar Hero type clone, or maybe even a minigame WarioWare type game. Yeah, I don't really have any rhythm, so the idea of perhaps making something I could try to enjoy in the Necrodancer series without forcing me to move on the beat might be better. Although I also know that kind of Cadence of Hyrule has a way to play that game without it actually requiring you to move on the beat. So there is kind of an adventure mode in at least Cadence of Hyrule. I don't know if Crypt of the Necrodancer ever got an update where you could play that way and play on like a super easy mode. And honestly, I'm not sure if Crypt of the Necrodancer is worth playing if you're playing it on that super easy mode. This does kind of come off as some rhythm-based minigames. A first-person narrative thriller called The Gap has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Which, yeah, it looks kind of like maybe a zombie apocalypse horror game. Or maybe perhaps a Silent Hill type The Room clone, where you're in this room and something terrible happened there. Yeah, it's surprising that there would be anything that you would actually compare to Silent Hill The Room, because it wasn't particularly that good of a game, but the idea of being in a single room in a horror experience never got copied by anything else. The Last Worker for PC launches October 19th, which I assume is a human fighting against a bunch of robots in a first-person shooter. Which there might be something to that idea. I could also see The Last Worker being a narrative story around this is what happens when Amazon.com automates everything and the world gets taken over by robots. Visually, that definitely looks different, and different is interesting to me most of the time. Game called Wizardry: The 5 Ordeals major update is now available. It adds an English translation for the official scenarios. Wizardry, I think, is a really, really old game, although the 5th one may not be that old. Definitely looks like just an old dungeon crawler of no real interest. A game called Solstice has a demo now available for PC, which looks a lot like Liza P, which looks a lot like so many other Dark Souls, Bloodborne clones. If anything, it's becoming a case where the fancier some of the teaser trailers are, the higher the chance that the game is going to be fairly generic. Which, that would make some sense, wouldn't it? A game called After Image launches this winter, which I assume you're playing as this character against some kind of monster here. Gamescom Future Game Show. Different than Opening Night Live, I guess. They probably had an event and then another event. That is something that has confused me quite a bit, is that they're having multiple events back to back Um, just for no good reason. Like, it doesn't really make that much sense. It made sense at E3 if Microsoft was announcing games that some of which might have been Microsoft exclusives, or PlayStation was making announcements where they might be PlayStation exclusives, or even Nintendo Directs making announcements for Nintendo exclusives. But when you're at Gamescom, pretty much every game is going to be on PC at minimum, and that is going to be a big focus. So I don't know if you really need two different events, but it could just be contract-based stuff. A game called Deliver Us Mars story trailer is available. It may also be a case that the opening night live is the AAA games that pay for top billing, and then the upcoming games event is more of the cheap or free option where they pick and highlight specific games. Deliver Us Mars here is a survival game on Mars, I believe, although it seems to oddly have a lot more story in the story trailer than I thought it would, because I really thought you'd just be playing as a nameless character surviving. A strategy game called Bulwark Falconeer Chronicles has been announced for PC. Let's see what that looks like. Kind of interesting looking visuals. It may be more of a real-time strategy resource game. Seems like you're building things around your islands, and maybe that gets you more resources or something. It is a uniquely visual looking way to build and connect parts of a city, building all these towers on spikes and islands. With anything, I think there might be a masterclass in this game around the idea of how to make a game look slightly different instead of your generic, let's give them some flat land surrounded by some ocean that you can't build on, and then tell them to build the same square buildings over and over again that are not visually appealing. Let's see, a game called Teslagrad 2 launches in the spring of 2023 for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Switch and Xbox Series and PC. Basically everything. I recall Teslagrad 1. I don't know if it ever made it to my wish list. The Dark Pictures Anthology has their next game, The Devil in Me, launching November 18th. Is that a guy? So is this going to be a gay story? Or maybe he killed that guy. Or maybe that's a statue. Welcome to Murder Hotel. Your death is this design. So now the Dark Pictures Anthology trailers are starting by showing scenes from previous Dark Pictures Anthology games. And effectively all the Dark Pictures Anthology games are is Telltale games that look a little bit better and are horror centric, which kind of undercuts the Walking Dead horror aspects, which the Walking Dead Telltale games weren't that horrific. Bunch of people trapped in a murder house. The thing about the Dark Pictures Anthology though is I just don't think they've ever come to PC, or I've ever bothered to play them. So if there was like some bundle to get the first 4 games on Steam, I probably should consider that, but I just don't think they have come to Steam. It says PC. Also, none of these games have been particularly that interesting. People talk about them for a while and then or video game journalists talk about them for a while, but that's it. So yeah, you know, Steam has been kind of de-emphasizing the idea of a bundle in general. Like I've seen less and less games that are getting bundled with other things. So like Supermassive Games, House of Ashes here, Little Hope here. There's plenty of other games that are being published by Bandai Namco, which I clicked on Supermassive and it took me to Bandai Namco. Never got around to playing Code Vein. Did play Ni no Kuni, didn't like it. Man of Medan, I think, is one of the earlier ones as far as the Dark Pictures anthology, or at least one on Steam. Which, wow, that almost makes me wonder if the Dark Pictures anthology series has several versions of the games that are just not on Steam, because I feel like there's more than just 3 or 4 out there, but maybe not. It's very possible that there actually are only 3 or 4 Dark Pictures anthology games at the moment. Moving on to Komatsu, last couple of Komatsu articles. The rhythm fighting game of God of Rock has been announced for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox Series and 1, Switch and PC. Which, kind of like the visuals, but the idea of a rhythm fighting game is kind of a hard sell to me, just again because I don't have any rhythm. Otherwise it might be interesting, but inherently the problem here is you've got somebody who's going to spend a lot of time animating fight sequences and actions that happen in the fight sequences that you can't look at because the player is actually going to have to be playing and looking down here. So your amount of your screen is just this little square, and then 80% of the screen up here is not something you can really control or pay any attention to. So as a concept, I think it fails. And then here's that game, Layers of Fears with an S for the trailer. An extended look into the final note. Now I assume that this is a new game. Layers of Fears will provide a new take on the original Layers of Fears '(S) stories today. So it's kind of remaking the first game and reimagining it, which is probably a better. It feels a little unnecessary because it's not like Layer of Fear, the original Layer of Fear game, is that old, and I feel like there may have already been a remaster already with it, and it is definitely a walking simulator with just a lot of spooky sequences and a few small choices that you can make. I didn't even really like the story of the first game. It wasn't until the DLC with the daughter that I felt like it was a little bit better. So it definitely feels like they're trying to take a second bite at the apple, and Bloober Team has done that with their other game, which I can't even remember the name of, and seems like they're just spending a lot of effort to try and get a second bite at the apple or redo work they've already done instead of just making a new game. But then again, people didn't like the new game they made after Layers of Fear either, so they're caught in a circle here. And people didn't really like Layers of Fear 2, which went in a different direction. Here they're doing the whole Bioshock Lighthouse idea, even. So yeah, that is definitely going to be a hard sell for me. Let's see. Fallout 76 Jeff Gardner founds a new studio called Something Wicked Games. We had already talked about their announcement of a new game. This is GameDeveloper.com's news. Gardner previously served as a producer on multiple Bethesda titles, including DLC for Elder Scrolls 4 and Fallout 3. And this word song game that they announced definitely looks like an attempt at Skyrim. Gamescom's 2022 showcase was more about the games of 2023. Much of the games shown at Gamescoms are expected to be released at some point in 2023, which would explain certainly why any announcement now didn't take place during a couple months ago during the E3 times, if people knew that these games were not going to come out until next year at the earliest. But there is also a general thought that maybe Gamescom is just vying to be the convention and the conference of note, and we will start to see games get their first announcements and bigger announcements at Gamescom, and less emphasis around whatever happens during the E3 times. Yeah. Tim Drake. I forget what his code name is. I think this is Tim Drake. Yeah, you have Robin, Red Robin, Batgirl, Tim Drake, or something like that. And these are the screenshots of the Arkham Knights characters. It's gonna be, we haven't seen this guy actually use guns, so it'll be interesting to see how he actually plays. I imagine his bullets are gonna be super weak. Here, GameDeveloper.com has a whole list of games if you just wanted the list they were announced at the event. I'll scroll through it very quickly just to see. Unknown Worlds, the makers of Subnautica, revealed a turn-based RPG called Moonbreaker, written by Mistborn author Brandon Sanderson. Haven't seen that. Everything else I think we saw a news story around. Maybe we didn't see anything about Under the Waves or Where the Winds Meets. So just by following Video Games Chronicles and Gamatsu, I'm getting most of the news stories, maybe missing a couple games. We already talked about Smash Bros. Creator Sakurai starting a new YouTube channel on game design. The thing about Kojima's podcast on Spotify is that it is going to be effectively live streamed and simulcast both in Japanese and English, which means there will be a live translator listening in to him streaming and I guess dubbing over it, and there will be video aspects too. Kojima doesn't really speak that much English, so that would certainly be interesting, particularly when you start to talk about Japanese game developers, as how much they're willing to spend as far as translating things to English to get a larger audience. GameDevelopers.com says get certified in Agile leadership at several levels in this GDC Masterclass course. This is a self-serving advertisement. And then we already talked about a space for the Unbound developer accusing P Cubed. Part of the problem, though, I would say is it's kind of hard to side with the developers of a space for the Unbound when P Cubed has published and released several other games without that kinds of problems. So until we started to see other game developers say, yeah, they did the same thing, or P Cubed really sucks, Like, you really would have to get that narrative going and get multiple sources for that to start to feel like some weight. Remember, GameDeveloper.com has pushed the narrative that Ubisoft really sucks over and over again, and yet it's not stuck and not been really echoed as much by other video game news sites because the court cases and slander charges they brought against the local French newspapers that was trying to push the narrative that Ubisoft sucks were all won in Ubisoft's favor. I don't think Ubisoft is great. You just have to look at their games and how they treat the player in their games, canceling a bunch of support for online and frankly making some games unplayable. And the types of games they make and the types of microtransactions they revolutionized all show that Ubisoft is much closer to EA, but they are, I think, a lot closer to EA keeping their heads down than they are Activision Blizzard, who are not keeping their heads down. And there are what I believe are very credible accusations against Activision Blizzard's employees and management. The DRM company Denuvo has released an anti-piracy program for the Nintendo Switch. Software maker Denuvo has created a Nintendo Switch emulator protector to block emulators and pirated games from being played on the Nintendo Switch, which I imagine that'll be cracked very quickly, and I'm not sure how many people would even bother to put Denuvo on a Switch game, considering how weak the Switch is and how terrible your game is probably going to run with Denuvo installed. The Everywhere developer vaguely addresses rumors of being an NFT game. I guess there were some rumors, and they said we have an abandoned blockchain, which probably means yes without saying yes. And then Phil Spencer thinks console exclusives will eventually go away, which we already talked about that. And we've got some fall list games to clean up. Dueled After, looks like a full motion video game. And so I think we can, because it's over 30 mostly positive reviews, although the reviews are really on the edge there, because it's an FMV game, I will make an exception and put that on the wish list. Although I'm not really playing that many FMV games. The World According to Girl is like a deck building game. It's English and Japanese, and it too is right on the cusp of being positive at 71%, but whatever. It's over 30 and it's mostly positive. That's the rules as far as games on the fall list. As to whether or not they make it to the wish list, does that inherently mean if it's on the wish list I'll buy it or play it? No, if anything, I'm just getting worse and worse about actually buying and playing games. This one's a VR game, so I'll leave this on the fall list because don't own a VR set and probably won't. This one I think has to go. It looks like it's a half visual novel, half collection of minigame adventure puzzles, but it just doesn't have enough relevancy, and it's been out for 6 months, so I don't expect it to gain any relevancy. So inherently these kinds of mini games are just not going to be enough to keep my attention or most players' attention, even if they were excellent mini games. Here we have a game called The Wind Road, which I think we could probably say no to, or we could give it more time, but I think we'll just have to say no. This is another one of those pretty Chinese games that look nice in screenshot, but obviously play poorly or have some other problem with them. This one doesn't have any microtransactions or anything, so that's not the problem, so I imagine it just plays pretty badly. We should be close to the end of games that start THE as far as the fall list, so next stream. This game is still early access, so I'll give it more time. I don't even remember seeing this game. Some kind of point and click adventure game, The Wild Case. It's very positive, so that can definitely make it to the wish list. Wild at Heart. Definitely can make it to the wish list. A lot of these games on the fall list simply were thrown on the fall list because I didn't want to make a decision at the beginning, or I just wanted to see if there was any fandom there. Wicked Days, I think we can say probably no to. It's June. I could give it a little bit more time and it may get a few more reviews, but I don't think it will get that many. Plus it's early access. The problem certainly is a lot of games just get abandoned at the early access level, and then there's no requirement to ever update that. This Whisper game, I think I'm also going to say no to, because it just looks like a generic kind of walking simulator. Yeah. It would be very, very easy for Steam to simply say every game that's in early access has 6 months to a year to come out of early access, or put an update of some sort out. Maybe not even have to come out of early access, just put out an update. And if they don't respond to that, if they don't respond to warnings and automated emails, then your game should potentially be lowered down to an abandonware category, or remove the early access, unfinished, like something like that, or really just removed from the store in general. Right now Steam has no real need to make they have really no need to make their store, the quality of the products on their store, better, but they really should improve that. Now I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed just to see if there's any new news worth mentioning. I started fairly late, so I think the answer to that is no. We do have a Komatsu article saying Resident Evil Village for PlayStation VR 2 is playable at the Tokyo Game Show 2022, and that might be a great example of where video games should go, in which games are more and more playable in VR, and not at least having a unified controller would get you further that way. Anyways, we've gone long. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.